Hi, it's Mary Allen with IT in Canada, and I'm here today at the Meeting of the Minds conference in Boulder, Colorado, talking with Bill Reinert, who's National Manager of Advanced Technology for Toyota Motor Sales. Thanks for taking the time to speak with me this afternoon, Bill.
Hey, thanks for hanging out here, Mary.
The first question I have is really about marketing and sales. So when an organization like Toyota is planning a launch of a major alternative product like the Prius, what kind of advanced planning and marketing do you have to do?
Okay, so we started working on the Prius in 1992 and brought it to market, really brought it to market around 1999. So it was a 7 to 8 years. Now, if we're going to do what we call a minor model change, like change the grille and the fenders, that's 3 years. And if we're going to do a full new vehicle, that's 5 years. And if we're going to bring new technology in, well, you got to develop the technology in the labs, you got to prove that technology works, and then you've got to be able to manufacture the technology. So what I'm telling you, Mary, is if a technology isn't ready to be developed right now, today, it won't be on the car by 2020. Because if you think about it, I need about 3 to 4 more years to make sure it works and make sure the customers will work with it, and then another 5 years to develop the product. Mm-hmm. So we're really working on 2020 cars right now.
Okay, so it's a very long-term project.
It's a long-term project.
Yeah. How do you appeal to the North American consumer who still seems addicted to fossil fuels and the internal combustion engine? What's the approach to?
Well, the North American consumer, in fact, globally consumer, not just North American, the global consumers really want to use fossil fuels, and they really want to use oil and gasoline and diesel, okay? Because primarily they're very fine fuels from an energy density point of view and from a practicality point of view, and actually have a fairly small footprint in the drilling rigs. And considering the amount of oil we use, the environmental damage, I know it sounds bad to say this, but it's true. If you look at the environmental damage versus the enormous amount of oil we use, it's fairly small. But time's marching on. Whether you know the things that we thought were true, going to be true yesterday, are not going to be true tomorrow, and so we have to go forward and we have to look at things we would like to do a market pull like we did with the early Prius. When we did the early Prius, we set the volumes very low. We knew how many we thought we could sell because we're pretty good at product planning, and so we set fairly low volumes. Now, we let the market pull those volumes up, and so we started out with 20,000 cars, and that went to 25 and 30, and all the time we were in the black because we knew how the sales would go. So now we're selling, in the United States, we might sell 150,000 Priuses a year, or Prii a year, whatever the plural is. So, still to be determined. So, the other way to do it is a regulatory push, and that's what we see in California, where the regulations are going to determine not only what technology you use, but how many of that technology you use. And the problem is, and I think we're going to see this with the electric cars right now, the pure electric cars, the market out there that the regulators envision is not happening. We're in a very severe economic downturn. People are worried about their jobs. These cars are twice as expensive as gasoline cars, and so the regulators may want that, but the market's not accepting it, and the auto industry gets caught in the middle.
Well, my next question was about the different appeal you might have to different jurisdictions, different countries of the world.
Sure.
So, is the level of regulation in that region the determining factor, or is it there's a different level of consumer awareness of environmental issues?
So there's in the world there's 4 or 5 geographic regions that you would want to sell in. There's the new emerging market in Russia. There's the Latin market driven by Brazil and their newfound economic growth. There's the North American market, there's the EU market, there's the Asian market, and there's the Far Asian market. So out of those markets, you need to be, as a global manufacturer, you need to be successful in 3 of them. And they are as different as chalk and cheese, okay? And the reason they are like that is because of, yes, regulatory, economic development, how many roads they have, what's the job system, what can they afford. The Tata Nano in India sells for, I think, the equivalent of $4,000, but you could never sell the car here. So it's based on regulatory, yes, economic, yes. Fuels, yes, we'll do natural gas in one area, and we'll do ethanol in another, and we'll do gasoline here, based on all that. But arching all of that is what the customer wants. The customer in each of those areas, what they want and what they can afford.
In North America, what would you say is the biggest barrier to adoption or greater adoption of hybrid and electric?
Well, the greatest adoption of hybrid and electric, and with hybrid and electric, I'm going to include fuel cell as a hydrogen electric car.
Sure.
And the greater adoption is really for hybrids themselves, like the Prius, the regular gasoline Prius, is just market awareness. Even after 10 years, it's still less than 2% of the market. Okay, so, and the Prius is the hybrid market. I think all the other hybrids added together are just a small sliver of the Prius. Okay, now from the electric point of view, that's a harder sell because people don't trust the batteries. They don't trust the life of the batteries. They don't trust the resale value of their car with the batteries. They're worried about getting stranded. They don't know how they're going to charge. The cars become expensive, and by the way, how many people really want a car that you can't drive? We're used to indefinite mobility. In other words, we can drive anywhere we want for as long as we want to go. Now, with an electric car, you've got definite mobility. You know that at the best case, you're going to drive 100 miles, and then you're going to stop for the day. So that, getting into the public conscious, is one of the big obstacles. And the other thing is, really, the auto industry doesn't have a great backlog of knowledge on how customers interact with electric cars, and not inconsequentially how the new lithium-ion batteries interact with the environment. So we're finding out as we go.
In terms of finding out, the next question has to do with research into alternative fuels, electric vehicles, development of hybrids. Can you put on the crystal ball hat now? You asked the panel this morning what they expect to see, what's going to be game-changing in the future. What's your opinion?
Well, part of the job that I have is to look out to 2050. And the scope of doing that, you look out to 2050, you bring it back to 2030. Because as I told you earlier, if something's not ready 10 years before you put it in production, it's not going to be ready. So you look at what things are likely to be out into the future, then 2030 and then 2020, and then you look at the technology you know is coming on, and you start to make assumptions of what's happening. So given that, and given that you're asking me to look in my crystal ball, and I can tell you this, there will be petroleum or petroleum-like fuels, liquid fuels, in the cars for a long period of time. Simply put, they are the most energy-dense way that we can of maneuvering of providing mobility. And so by energy-dense, meaning they package very small. So to go 300 or 400 miles doesn't really require a lot of gasoline. It would require a huge amount of batteries. So you will see fuels like that. We'll start to take the carbon out of the fuels, and so we will be using a gasoline or a diesel, but it might not necessarily be from petroleum. It might be from algae or some other kind of bio-base, but it would probably be a drop-in gasoline replacement. We'll continue to see the internal combustion engine. They're very good, and we're getting really good at making them efficient. They'll get smaller. The cars will become lighter. We will see a lot more electric drive. Probably the biggest thing you're going to see, as you heard today on the panel we had, is autonomous driving cars. Probably we're probably closer to getting cars that can drive themselves than we are to having really viable electric cars. So that kind of work's going on. And so once we start having autonomous driving cars, then we start to open up a lot of stuff, and that's platooning cars, where one car talks to another, and your space between cars becomes very small, and the cars go down the highway, and so you can occupy a whole lot more roadway with a whole lot more cars on the same roadway.
I think that'll take some consumer education. It seems very futuristic to me. When I saw the video today, I was very impressed. It's really intriguing. But it still looks like it's pretty much into the future. But you're in that business of planning.
I am in that business, and I've driven in a Prius, not driven the Prius, I've driven in a Prius from, I've seen that. There are autonomous driving cars on the road now, and you can essentially see that being tested in various areas. In fact, like I said, the Nevada legislature is already looking at approving their state laws for autonomous driving cars. They're actually in testing now. There's several of them now. Google's got one. Other manufacturers are working on that. Everybody's working on that. And a lot of the links to do that are already there. You start with cruise control. Okay, that's going to maintain your speed. Then you've got adaptive cruise control because it can sense with sonar, it can sense the car ahead of you and it'll slow you down and speed you up. So that's almost all cruise controls have that now. And so then you've got little lasers that look out and read the road, so you've got lane keep. Okay, so now just in the normal stuff you got on everyday cars, you can get them on all this stuff on the Prius. You start to bundle that all up, and you start to bundle it up with cameras and other stuff, and then some software, and you start to see how autonomous driving takes over.
Okay, just one last question for our IT audience.
Yeah.
How does IT play into these kinds of research efforts?
Oh, IT, I can't overestimate. I can't say enough about how this is going to come about, and because we've got a fleet of 150 cars that are out here that we're testing, the electric cars, and they have a data logger on them, and I collect 200 bits of data, 200 channels of data off of every car every second. That all comes back into a big database. But we've got to make sense of it. And so we're developing tools to allow us to take a look and to understand how the consumer actually behaves. Nobody knows how a consumer behaves when their car plugs in and the grid shuts down, and we don't know that kind of stuff. So that's what we're looking at. Does driving aggressively reduce your range? How does this work? How does the temperature reduce your range or increase your range? And how does this all work? And that's all what we're working on. Now, for the consumer, the issue is with electric cars, and it's going to be, or hydrogen cars, you're in your office, you're getting ready to go home, you want to get in your car with a pre-cooled car, and I want you to get in your car with a pre-cooled car, because if I don't have to cool your car down so fast, and I can make a smaller air conditioner, I can save you energy. So I want you to be at your desk with your iPhone or your Android system or your iPad or whatever you got, and I want you to dial up your car, and I want you to turn the air conditioning on before you leave. And pre-cool your car. I want you to understand whether your car is charged or not. I want you to understand where the public charging points are, and not just know where they are, but are they operatable? Because remember, all these public chargers are subject to vandalism. They've got copper in them, the cords get cut. So it doesn't do you any good if your navigation systems take you to a charger that doesn't work, or where there's a car park. So you've got to have IT that allows you to know where the chargers are, to find out if the charger's working, and to reserve space on that charger so you can park there, and also then so you can know how your car's charging. All this stuff is coming. The integration of the iPad and the Android system and the iPhones into the car is what keeps us awake at night.
Okay, so IT is enabling research, construction, operation of the vehicle, but also providing a better user experience for the driver.
It's everything.
Yeah,
It's completely vertical through everything I do.
Okay.
Totally.
Perfect. Thanks so much for your insight, Bill.
Sure.
I really appreciate it.
Thanks.
Okay.